What's going on, everyone? Trust the Buzz here. If you're new to the channel, I make daily Charlotte Hornets content. So if that interests you, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. If you cannot tell by the thumbnail or title of this video, in today's video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Dennis Smith Jr. So normally I like to do like the research and then kind of do a video explaining what I found and what I think of the player and what you can expect from the player while introducing them to the franchise or to the fan base. However, in today's video, I'm going to be kind of doing my research with y'all along. So I've already looked at this a little bit, but I'm going to kind of take you through my process just to see if you like it, just to switch things up. So if you like this format, let me know in the comment section below, and don't forget to leave a like. That's the best way you can support the channel. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so as you see here, our favorite website, Basketball Reference, one of my favorite websites. I feel like they just got everything, and then there's some couple other websites as well, like Basketball Index and all these things. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about Dennis Smith Jr. So as I stated before, he was on the Dallas Mavericks for I think 2 years. He was drafted by them, drafted 9th overall out of North Carolina State. He's from Fayetteville, North Carolina, as well as me. So that's always love that. And then so let's go ahead and just talk about his stats. So last year he played for the Portland Trail Blazers, 37 games, 5.6 points, 2.4 rebounds, 3.6 assists while shooting 42, 22, 66 with a 13.2 PER, which we don't care too much about that just because that's so subjective, and that's a stat you really have to deep dive into to really get the full picture. So we're not worried about that. So now we're just going to go down and kind of just look at all his stats, like the advanced stats and things like that, and kind of break down what maybe we can expect from him being on the Charlotte Hornets. So like I said, these were his stats from last year, and they're not too impressive. However, neither were the Portland Trail Blazers. They weren't that impressive. If you look, his 3-point percentage is what brought down his field goal. So his field goal with just 2-pointers was a 45%. So that's jump shots at the basket, which we'll see how many shots he took at the basket and how many mid-range jumpers he took. But that's actually a good sign. So yeah, he can't shoot threes, but we have a lot of guys on the team that can shoot threes, and he can attack the basket, which we don't have many of. We don't have many guys who are very effective at attacking the basket. And I can tell you right now, Dennis Smith Jr., he takes jumpers, but that's not his game. So you can probably safely assume that 45% is him attacking the basket. And I'm not mad at that because we need that dearly. Now, he does need to get his free throw percentage up. That's one thing I'm actually nervous about that I feel like that's not going to get talked about enough, is because of the fact that Kelly Oubre struggled from the line last year and we had Mason Plumlee. So our bench is like a hack-a-shack. So I'm actually curious about just how that's going to work, because a lot of times you may have those three guys on the court at the same time. So 3 out of the 5 guys you have on the team or on the court cannot shoot free throws. So you're hoping that one of them gets better, and if it's going to be any of them, I assume it'd be Kelly Oubre, but we'll see. But yeah, they all need to work on their free throw, but mainly Kelly Oubre and Dennis Smith Jr. Now, what's interesting about this signing overall is the fact that it is a non-guaranteed deal. So that's a good job by Mitch Kupchak, is the fact that he was willing to kind of take a flyer on this guy. And that kind of tells you the state of the team without them saying much. So the reason I say it tells you the state of the team is because he's a young guy about to turn 25, I believe. And he is from North Carolina, so they like to take flyers on guys like that. But the thing is, they're taking a flyer. This move isn't going to catapult you into the playoffs. If they wanted to catapult themselves into the playoffs, they would have got Rondo. And I'm not even saying Rondo would have did it, but it'd been better than Dennis Smith Jr. But they would have got Rondo. They would have got Eric Bledsoe. They would have made a trade. There's a bunch of different things they could have did. A bunch of backup point guards they could have signed if they wanted to try to fight for a playoff spot. This is kind of more so throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks. So I feel as though we could see a fire sale at the trade deadline if things don't go as planned. We might can even see it earlier. I think that maybe they're waiting on the suspension of Miles. So regardless if Miles is guilty or not, there's going to be a suspension coming because the position he put himself, the team, and the NBA in. So I think if it's like a whole season or half a season, whatever the case may be, we saw with Ime Udoka. I mean, he's got stuff going on. He was going a whole season. So granted, he was suspended by the Celtics, not the NBA, the Celtics. So there is a little bit of a difference there. But if Miles is only suspended 20 games, NBA is going to get a lot of backlash, and therefore that's going to make, everybody upset. And so the NBA is going to make sure they suspend Miles appropriately when they do. But Anyway, that's what this signing is telling you, is that we don't know. They don't know what's going on, and they're just trying to make sure, like, hey, let's just see what we have in Dennis Smith Jr. But anyway, let's keep talking about Dennis Smith Jr. So one thing I want to look at, like I said, is his. We'll look at his advanced numbers later. I want to look at his adjusted shooting. So adjusted shooting is just basically going to tell you everything you need to know about his shooting. Also, I want to look at his actual shooting. So let's look at adjusted shooting first. So his true shooting percentage, this is the league average, right? So this basically 56%. And so then you go to his is 47, but it's because those threes are really hindering him. And honestly, he's a better 3-point shooter than that. He dealt with injury last year, so that's one thing to keep in mind. And then let's actually go down to the actual shooting, because this is where we can really see a lot of things. So right here, like I said, field goal percentage is basically 42%. And then look at his 2-pointers right here. So 85% of his shots are 2-pointers. So doesn't take that many threes. And then you look at how many were between 0 and 3 feet. And so what's that? 35. And then he has a 31%. So that's basically 60% of his shots are near the basket. Between 0 and 10 feet, he is that's where 60% of his shots come from. And then he barely even has 10% from like a mid-range, and then like the deep mid-range. He actually does take a lot of deep mid-ranges. It's like roughly 11%. That's not a lot. That's a lot when it's that deep and he's not that good of a shooter, but it's not a lot to be worried about. And then you look at his 3-point, he shoots 14% of his shots are from 3. Now, let's look at by distance how often he makes them. So as I said earlier, 45% of the time he shoots a 2-pointer, he makes it. So, but we saw 60% of his shots come from inside the painted area or close to it. So then when you look at his percentage at the rim, it's 52. That's really good, because the Charlotte Hornets don't have many guys who can attack the basket and be effective at the basket. It's just something we struggle at. And then also it doesn't help that like Mason Plumlee's down there. So when they drive the basket, the center's still in the paint. So that's just like small things you got to think about when you're looking at stats. So stats kind of get you on the right track. However, it does take the eye test and just some basketball knowledge to understand what exactly is going on. So if they can find a way to get Mason Plumlee at the paint, I feel like everybody's going to finish more effectively, but especially Dennis Smith Jr., because that's what he's best at. And so then you look at his 3 to 10 feet, 43%. I'm not mad at that. I mean, yeah, it could be a little higher, but he's also a guard. So I'm not mad at 43%. That's actually pretty good. Then when you get to the deep twos, not good. He shoots 25%. Now earlier I said that he takes too many deep twos, like really deep twos, because these are like mid-range twos, the 10 to 16 feet shots. But the 16 foot to wherever the 3-point, I think it's 20. I don't know. It's like 22 or something like that. Anyway, he actually does really well at 45%. Now, granted, only 11% of his shots are those really deep twos, but he makes 45% of them. So adding a little mid-range game is not going to hurt. That's like the Gordon Hayward-esque, because Gordon Hayward is probably, off the top of my head, the best mid-range shooter on the team when he's healthy. He's really good at just finding his spots in the mid-range and making those shots. It's nice to have another guy who can do that and also attack the basket, because everybody else mainly focuses on the 3-point shot and then usually kind of getting to the rim, but they're just not that effective at the rim. So another thing to talk about is how often his field goals are assisted. So you look at his 2-point shots, only 33% is assisted, which on this team, ball movement is key, at least with James Borrego. And like I said, on offense, Steve Clifford said he wasn't going to, deviate from that too much. So we can only assume that they're going to kind of run somewhat of the same offense. I think that's going to go up, and that's going to help him. But Dennis Smith Jr. also, this shows he can get his own bucket. And granted, also look at the stats when you think about it. Who was passing him the ball? Anthony Simons is more of a bucket getter himself, so he's not really passing the ball like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's who he'd been playing with last year. So yeah, I think that's going to go up, and I think that's going to help him in the long run, but it also shows that he can get his own bucket. So, and we saw how he can finish inside the paint. So I'm not mad at it. This is just going to be another dynamic player to add on the offensive end. And I know we really haven't talked about defense, but I'm going to get to that in a second. And then look at his 3 points, 50% are assisted. So it shows he's more of a spot up guy, which is perfectly fine, because like I said, while LaMelo, while Terry, while Gordon Hayward, while PJ all aren't the best finishers in the paint, they're not Miles Bridges in the paint, they all have the ability to pass out and be accurate with their passes and get it to an open shooter, because that's how the Hornets offense works. So I think he's going to fit just fine within that. Now, one thing I want to talk about that I don't think they're really going to show. Let's just look at his game highs really quick. So let's look at his rebounds. So 7 rebounds, that's good, and 11 assists. So one thing that's not talked about enough with Dennis Smith Jr. is that he's actually a really good passer. He's a decent passer, and 6 steals. That's one thing I also forgot. Dennis Smith Jr., and we can get into that when we talk about his defense, but he's very just active, and that's what the Hornets need. They have Cody Martin. Cody Martin is another defender who I'm not going to lock you up just by shuffling my feet or just, wingspan wise. I'm just active. I'm always shuffling my feet at you. You don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm just very active on the defensive end, and that's what Dennis Smith Jr. does. He's very active, and he can play those passing lanes similar to how Terry Rozier plays them, Cody Martin plays them. Like, those guys, they really play the passing lanes, and LaMelo gets more on-ball steals, but these guys are just really active, and so if Dennis Smith Jr. can tip the ball, LaMelo gets it, boom, fast break, and that's what this team wants, and then Dennis Smith Jr. can finish it for all. Like, those two guys can play together, but it also helps to have a backup point guard that plays similar to your starting point guard, that the quick, let's get on the break point guard. But I think they can also have minutes together. It's not going to be too many minutes, but I just wouldn't be surprised seeing that lineup just because they are so fast. LaMelo's so good at just initially running the break, but you have Dennis Smith Jr. who can finish the break and start the break by just being so active on defense, and that's when we can really dive into his defense. But also look at the 21 points, really good. Anyway, he's just an active defender. Like I said, he knows how to rotate. He does stay in front of guys. But like I said, one thing that is just really important about his defense is the fact that he knows how to just make you uneasy. So he's not Kawhi Leonard on defense where he's staying still, but he just is so focused and so honed in on defense that he can stop you. He's not that type of defender. His defense comes from just him being so athletic, and him being able to reach in and take the ball, him being able to deflect the ball, him just being able to just keep up with you and just really just make you uneasy, just suffocate you. That's what kind of defender he is, and it does involve gambling a little bit, but with this kind of offense, the way we want to run our offense, I personally don't see a problem with that, just because of the fact that that's kind of building into what we already are going to do. And then also you got Steve Clifford, who's just a defensive master. So I'm really interested to see how he's going to use Dennis Smith Jr. And I think Dennis Smith Jr. is going to be a really effective signing, even though, it's not guaranteed. So if he doesn't, fine. But I don't think he's going to send us into the playoffs. I don't even think he's going to send us into the play-in, but I do think he's going to show out to the point where they're like, hey, let's bring this guy back, and then let's, fix the rest of the roster. Because if the Hornets do a rebuild, it's not going to be the rebuilds of old, if that makes any sense. It's not going to be where they're waiting 10 years, they're waiting 5 years. It's going to be, all right, let's get all the cap out the way. Let's get some picks. And then we're not even going to draft. We're just going to trade for people, because they have so many guys they've drafted in the last few years that those guys can eventually get better. And then you trade out the veterans and then you bring in new people. I personally don't see this team making the playoffs, so that's why we had to think that way. But anyway, let me know what you think of this kind of video where I just kind of deep dive into Dennis Smith Jr. and into the players, into new players, just because of the fact that, like I said, I normally do the research myself, then come back. But I try to do it a different way this time just because I want to show y'all the process, and kind of y'all saw the numbers too, so y'all can, have different opinions, and let me know what those opinions are in the comment section below. And I know that really I don't want to base it off numbers, but you know how copyright goes on YouTube. I can't just show clips and things like that. And if I do, I run the risk of being copyrighted, and that's just a whole nother story. But thank you so much for watching. Like I said, let me know what you think of the format, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.